Hello security gurus, welcome to this new lecture. In this lecture we are going to learn about AWS WAF, which is Web Application Firewall, and also we are going to understand what is AWS Shield. Now first let's understand what is AWS WAF. So AWS WAF is a Web Application Firewall that protects against the malicious attacks. So all the web requests coming from API gateway, Amazon CloudFront distribution, or any application load balancer, all those web requests can be protected using Web Application Firewall. You can define various rules within this firewall, and you can also define regular expressions in the firewall. So let's see how that works. So first we will have to create a web ACL. ACL means access control list. So let's click on create web ACL. Once you click on create web ACL, first we will have to provide a name to the ACL. So we will give it as first WAF ACL. Then it is automatically fetched name that we have given for ACL. So let's keep it as is. Now it is asking where do we want to implement this web ACL. So in my previous project where I was working on AWS, we had deployed many APIs in API gateway, and we had attached this firewall to the API gateway itself. Whatever requests that were coming from API gateway, we had implement few regular expression rules in order to identify any kind of cross-site scripting attacks. So that's how you can use web ACL. So let's keep the regional resource selection as is. Now if you can see, this is optional, but you can add AWS resources deployed on Amazon API Gateway, Application Load Balancer, and AWS AppSync. Since we do not have any resource deployed right now, we will leave it as is. Let's click on next. Now we can add rules to the web ACL. Now either we can create our own rules or we can use AWS created rules. So if we click on add managed rule groups, we will see that there are many kind of rules available. We can use AWS created rules, or we can use rule groups created by third parties as well. So as you can see, these rule sets are available from the marketplace. We will have to subscribe to these rules from AWS marketplace if we want to add these rules to our AWS ACL. So let's use as of now AWS managed rule groups. I will add a bot control rule group. Then we can add admin protection. We have the Amazon IP reputation list. IP reputation list is if there are few IPs which are blocked and from where we are getting the request, the ACL will block all the requests coming from the blocklisted IPs. Anonymous IP list, so if there is a request coming from a system who does not have any IP, this rule will block that request. Suppose in case you have deployed any automation framework on Lambda and it is sending requests to your API gateway, so in that case there won't be any IP address attached, and in that case it will get blocked. We had this issue in our previous project, and all those requests coming from the automation framework got blocked because of this rule. So we had to disable this rule. So I have enabled some of the rules and I have consumed some of the capacity. So let's click on add rules. As you can see, we have used 225 of the capacity out of 1500. As you can see, the total capacity units of the web ACL cannot exceed 1500. So make sure that the rules that you are adding do not exceed 1500. Otherwise, you will have to select only the prioritized or the most important rule sets. So let's see what else is there. Now we have the default web ACL action for requests that don't match any rules. It means that if suppose there is any request which do not match any rule, what do we want to do with that request? Do we want to allow it or block it? So as of now, we will keep it allow. If you have a preference to block it, you can block all other requests. So now you can set the rule priority. Basically it means that we can arrange our rule sets based on the priority. For an example, we want that nobody shall be able to launch any admin attack. So this is the most important rule for us. We can move it up Similarly, if suppose the availability of our APIs or application is most important for us, I will move this rule at the top. So that's how we set the rule priority. We'll click on next. Now we can enable some metrics or sampling option. Sampling option means that AWS will keep on monitoring the requests that are coming to this ACL, and then it will show us some graphs. In case we disable the sample request, we won't be able to view those graphs, but if we enable it, we will be able to see some of the graphs. So better we keep it enabled and click on next. As you can see, this is the summary. We have given this name and CloudWatch metric name was generated by AWS. Then we have added these rules to our ACL. We have used 225 capacity, and we have allowed all the requests that do not match any of the given rules above, and we have enabled the sampling of the request as well. Let's create our first web ACL. As you can see, the web ACL has been created. Let's click on it. As you can see, now you can see the request per 5-minute period. Basically, it means that after every 5 minutes, the graphs will be refreshed. Also, you can see these graphs based on the time duration for 3 days or 1 day. As of now, the graph has not been populated. Once we will start receiving the request, this graph will be populated. It takes some time to populate this graph. Then we can see the sampled request here. So what will happen is all the requests that are allowed or blocked will be shown here with an action allow or block at the right. In my previous project where we implement this, we could see all the blocked requests that failed the rules. And that's how we got to know someone was attacking with cross-site scripting attacks on our APIs. So this sampling request will help you to identify the reason why the request was blocked or allowed. What are the rules are there? So these were the rules that we had added. We can add more rules from here again. If suppose you want to add more rules, once you have created the ACL, you can use these options to add the rules. Let's see bot control, where AWS will present you any graphs where it identifies that some bots are sending the request. So you will see orange color for the bot request, and for non-bot request you will see the blue color. So the data will be populated once the requests are sent to API gateway and API gateway is connected to AWS WAF. Let's see the associated AWS resources. Now, in case in future we have more APIs created and deployed to AWS API Gateway, we can click on Add AWS Resources and we can select all the new APIs that have been created and click on Add. Now we can have a custom response body. Now suppose we want to send a custom response to specific request, we can do it from here. On the logging and metrics, we can see that the logging is disabled, but we can enable it from here. So let's click on enable. You can see that it asks where do we want to send our logs. We can send our logs to CloudWatch logs group, or we can send to Kinesis for the analytics, or we can store our logs to S3 bucket. If we select Amazon CloudWatch log, we will have to create a CloudWatch logs log group here. So we will have to create new, and then we need to select that log group here itself. If we want to omit any data being stored within our logs, we can select these fields based on the information being sent. Suppose if there is any confidential information in any of these fields, you can redact those fields from the logs. So as of now, I'll click on cancel as I do not want to enable logging. Let's see what is CloudWatch log insights. So basically, once we will enable our logging and metrics, CloudWatch will generate some insights based on the information being stored in the logs, and it will be able to present the insights here itself once we have some data in the logs. So that's how you create a web ACL using WAF provided by AWS. In the next video, we will see how we can create regex patterns, what are the use of regex patterns, and how we can attach those regular expression patterns to our web ACLs. So I hope you have enjoyed this lecture. Thanks for watching. See you in the next chapter.